So we'll kick things off with our multi-channel selection feature. So our multi-channel feature allows unique transmissions to be sent simultaneously on separate channels, increasing the possibilities of how customers and merchants can exchange data, providing leading class transaction control. Now, by default, radius tones will transmit on a single channel, but with multi-channel, up to 2 additional channels can be leveraged to transmit a single, 2, or 3 unique data payloads at the same time that can also be received on the intended device simultaneously. We live in a very tokenized world where digital interaction within on-premise environments is a growing priority across industries. So using the transit example from the previous slide and incorporating some real-world integration components like a merchant backend server, a location ID can be established from a merchant backend and sent to a mobile device on one channel. This can be followed by a network check to establish proximity to the merchant. A secondary location ID can be sent on a second channel to trigger a unique credential, and a verification ID can be sent on the third channel where a validation can take place with the merchant server to ultimately complete that process. Another way to think about multi-channel selection is in the form of multimodal communication. Imagine where 3 separate data channels can make up one unidirectional transmission when paired with app logic to improve business operations. So just in this example, you can send some form of a user ID or credential, maybe a loyalty ID that's associated to said user, and some confirmation of a purchase that they've had. And these could all trigger different backend operations depending on what that merchant has set up. So really cool things that we can do with multi-channel, and we're really excited to see how customers will leverage this feature. Next up is ToneLock. Now, our ToneLock feature is an optional security feature that's intended for transmitters and receivers that leverage our point tone profiles only. ToneLock is not the same as encryption. However, encryption and ToneLock prevent the same man-in-the-middle attacks. Our customers can still add their own encryption plus ToneLock for an additional layer of security. So ToneLock leverages a unique UUID that is set in the header of an outgoing radius tone transmission. If the UUID of the transmitted payload does not match the UUID set by the receiver, the payload cannot be received. This prevents anyone from being able to receive the payload except the intended recipient. This provides enhanced fraud control for merchants and consumers. The UUID for transmitters and receivers could be placed into an application statically, or it could leverage a backend integration to have a dynamic UUID. So again, another key feature, security has been one of those areas that a lot of interest has been, and we've definitely wanted to ensure that we are able to facilitate that with this feature. So really excited to see how this can also provide some additional value to our customers who are leveraging this new security feature. So next up, we're going to transition into some of the more UI UX controls. So when it comes to UI and UX, again, we're an SDK. We work with applications. So a lot of the things that can be enabled with leveraging these callbacks really is determined on the development teams. They can have different looks and feels. They can have different, flavors to how they can implement these things. But just wanted to kind of set the stage that these are all elements that can be configured independent of what the customer may need in their environment. So I'll dive into the details here now with our tone quality indicator, actually with our tone presence indicator first, and then we'll get into some of our tone quality and failure callbacks next. So our tone presence callback is an indicator that can be used to improve UI UX elements in an application using the Radius SDK. So for an example, it can leverage the SDK to work with AppLogic to show a pop-up or a toast message when the very first part of an incoming tone is detected. The tone presence indicator can be a helpful value in informing end users that the rest of a larger tone is incoming using a zone tone, or to simply hold their device steady while receiving point tones. So staying on the theme of UI UX, the tone quality and failure callback indicator, these are new features that can be used in an application to let end users know how difficult it was to receive a tone, or to how to improve physical positioning if a tone fails to be received. The Radius SDK provides this feedback in the form of signal to noise ratio and error vector magnitude values. So here's a visual example of how a good or great tone quality transmission could be represented, and how we'll go through a few different scenarios to show the different variances. So you can see a green microphone, again, using the parameters that we provide in the SDK. You can return that visual feedback however you would like to. As we go to the next example, you may see yellow. So for yellow, for context, it doesn't indicate that it's a failure or an issue with the detection. However, lower quality just simply indicates that there was more difficulty in receiving the tone due to lack of line of sight, possibly maybe between some form of distance between the speaker and microphone. So again, equate it to what you would have with Wi-Fi. You know, it's a good example. We're all on Wi-Fi right now looking at this webinar. You could have 3 full bars of Wi-Fi, or maybe you have 2. 2 means that you're still connected. Maybe it's just not as good. But again, this is a good correlation to what this kind of means when you see something that's yellow. Now, this next scenario, when a tone fails, this will now result in a gray color. And this new failure callback ultimately ensures that proper feedback can be presented to the receiving application when it fails to receive a tone whose presence was detected. In this case, a message to move your device closer to the merchant device is shown, and it can be used to help instruct end users to avoid future failure. So, working as a software, we can work with applications to help improve that user experience. But again, this can be configured in any way that could be desired for any customer base in any use case where there could be some value.